David. We'll start with that story. We'll start with the 2 Samuel story. King David, you wouldn't call him old at this point, but he's maybe a little bit past his prime. We've been getting some snapshots of David's life. Last Sunday, you remember David was just consolidating all of his power, consolidating his authority, pulling the kingdom together. The enemies had finally been pushed back. Life was finally stable. David had a palace. He was looking forward to building a temple for God's dwelling. Life was good at that point. But now it's been down the road a few more years. You wouldn't exactly call him old, but he was kind of past his prime. Did you hear this? We all know this David and Bathsheba story. We're accustomed to that story. We've heard it over and over. But did you notice the setup in the text as the text was starting to tell us the story? The setup that kind of makes all of this thing make some sense? It says in the story that David stayed home while the soldiers went to war. It was the spring of the year, the time when the kings go out to battle, and David sent Joab. This was back in a day when things were done a little more honestly than they are in our time. When the king declared war back in those days, the king led the troops. The king went out in front of the troops and led them into battle, instead of like today when a president can declare war or Congress can declare war and send all the young people off to fight the battle instead of having guts enough to go out there and fight the battle themselves. They were more honest in those days. And David, in his youth, was not afraid of a fight. I don't know that he went looking for trouble, but if a fight came his way, even as his reign began to consolidate, if a fight needed to be picked, David was not afraid to pick a fight, except now this spring, when it was time to go out to do battle, and David sent Joab. Maybe he was feeling a little less manly than he wished he felt. That, of course, then unleashes this chain of events, which ends up with the Bathsheba story that we know so well. Somebody said one time that an older man chasing a younger woman is a little bit like a dog chasing a car. You wouldn't know what to do with it if you caught it. Although every old dog I know would surely like to find out. Because none of us old dogs wants to be an old dog. That's just how it is, and that's just how it is. Which gets us pretty quickly to the point. Whatever gets us discouraged, whatever gets us depressed, whatever gets us downhearted, also has the ability to make us desperate, also has the ability to make us dumb. Getting older can do it. Getting laid off from your job can do it. Stormy weather can do it, literally stormy weather or figuratively stormy weather. Scarcity can do it, whether we're talking economic scarcity or some other kind of scarcity. Frustration over the way things are can do it. Fear over what might happen can do it. You start getting discouraged or depressed or downhearted, and pretty soon we start getting desperate and we start getting dumb. Ask David. Ask the disciples. Ask that crowd out there in the wilderness feeling somewhat deserted. Before you know it, you're feeling desperate, and pretty soon you start doing dumb things. And David knew better, of course. David knows the 10 Commandments as well as you know the 10 Commandments, as well as I know the 10 Commandments. David knows the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. But sometimes knowing is beside the point. Knowing is sometimes beside the point. Knowledge doesn't cure that desperate gnawing down here in your gut. Knowledge doesn't cure that desperate gnawing down here. You know it's true, and I know it's true because you've experienced it, and so have I. Knowledge doesn't cure that desperation that gnaws away inside us. The cure demands more than knowing better. It demands more than knowing better. The crowd was feeling rather desperate out there in the wilderness, and they didn't know what to expect. They were in a bit of a predicament. They didn't have food, they didn't have water, which can be a dangerous predicament to be in. But as you heard that story from John's Gospel and you sort of read between the lines, you sensed very quickly that there was a deeper kind of desperation going on there too. There was a political yearning, a religious yearning, a social yearning. They were yearning desperately for liberation. They were yearning desperately for freedom. And this Jesus character, whoever he is, this is pretty early in the game, so nobody really knows who this Jesus character is, except that they know he does remarkable stuff. He has done some signs, is what John calls them. Other gospel writers call those same things miracles, but John isn't so much interested in their miraculous quality. He's interested in their sign quality. These things happen, you see them happen, and they point you towards something. They help you see something. They point something out that you might have missed otherwise. So for John, all of these miracles really are signs. That's what he's interested in. Signs that Jesus was doing for the sick people. And so they start following Jesus, who's doing these wonderful signs for the sick people, to see what he will do next. And the next thing they know, they're out in the middle of nowhere. And Jesus senses that this is a good time for another sign. And so he will offer the folk another glimpse, another opportunity for insight. Starts out with his own disciples. He asks the disciples a question, and in the story it said he asked the question to test the disciples. How are you going to feed this crowd, boys? They were all boys. How are you going to feed this crowd? And one of the disciples who's been wandering around in the crowd says, well, here's a boy who's got those 5 little loaves of bread, those 2 little fish. And so Jesus receives the gift from the boy, and he blesses them and distributes them. And everybody got as much as they wanted. Everybody was filled with food. And the people do get the point, because this is a good sign. The sign that points well. It points them in the right direction. The sign that helps them see what they need to see. And so they say of this sign performer, he is indeed a prophet. Not only a prophet, but the prophet who is to come. The prophet who is to come into the world. Well, that was part of the point he got anyway. Such a sign doer would be powerful, and such a sign doer would be popular. So they said of him, let's make him king. Let's make him king. Surely he has the power to dump the Romans. The Romans were the people who ran the world in that time, and nobody liked the Romans unless you were Roman. Let's see if maybe he can dump the Romans. We understand. We're caught up in all these wars that we can't seem to get done with. The economy continues to be in the dumper. I've been learning this week some new lessons about medical costs and health insurance and all that crazy stuff. These people in those hospitals can throw around these huge numbers and never even blink an eye. I can't even write the check. I can't spell the numbers. You understand. You've been there. We know the feeling. And so back in 2008, when the announcement about President Obama, or was not president at the time, announcing that he would create change, it drove that election in wonderful ways, and it was no surprise at all in 2008 that Obama won the election, because he was going to change things. And we who were voting in those days were desperate, and that's how he got his mandate. And of course, now the situation hasn't played out so well, and so Mr. Romney is claiming to be able to do all kinds of change, and the odds are fairly good come November that he will get the opportunity to learn the very same hard lessons that Mr. Obama has learned in the last 4 years, because the climate that we have created in Washington on both sides of the aisle is such that nobody can do anything. Jesus is facing that kind of situation here. Let's take him by force and let's make him king, because something needs to change and we need to make something happen. Surely Jesus can give us what we need. He can secure and get back for us what we need to have. And these desperate times demand some desperate measures. Now, turning to Jesus may well be the right thing to do. Turning to Jesus may well be the right thing to do. Jesus may be the one who has the ability to make those radical, deep changes that make life better, but only when Jesus sets the terms, only when Jesus defines the relationship. And that's what St. Paul was pointing at in that letter to the Ephesians. He wrote there, "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father from whom every family in heaven and on earth takes its name." The Father from whom every family in heaven and earth takes its name. Every family, your family, my family, every family, even the families who are afraid there won't be enough, even the families who are afraid they won't be able to get out of debt, even the families who are afraid that their despair and their depression will get the better of them, even the families who are afraid that they will be helpless and homeless before long. Every family, St. Paul said, even your family and my family, every family takes its name from the Father. Naming is about authority. Naming is about power. Naming is a way of saying that God is God. God says who is who. God says what is what. And God says, no matter how old you are, no matter how screwed up you are, no matter what you're addicted to, I am still your God, and I will still love you in ways that surpass knowledge. I am still your God, and I will do for you what needs to be done. I am still your God, and I will accomplish in you far more than you can ask or imagine, because you are mine, because I gave you your name, because I am your Father, because my Spirit gives you life, because my Son dwells in your hearts. So do not be afraid, Jesus says to us. Even in the stormy sea, I will be your solid rock. Even when you are depressed, I am your solid rock. Even when you are downhearted, I am your solid rock. Even when you are discouraged, I am your solid rock. Don't do anything desperate. Don't do anything dumb, because I am your solid rock. Don't be afraid. Don't grasp at straws, because I am your solid rock. But even if your depression drives you over the edge, I am still your solid rock. And even if your desperation makes you as dumb as a dog chasing a car, I am still your solid rock. I will stand you up, and I will make you stand. I will strengthen your inner being. I will love you in ways that surpass knowing. I will do more for you than you can ask, more than you can imagine. I am your solid rock. I will stand you up, and I will make you stand. This is the good news. This is the gospel of the Lord.